Hi, guys. If you remember from yesterday, we left off with Abraham getting ready to sacrifice his son Isaac to God. He was laying on the altar, and Abraham has the knife raised, and that's where our story finished. So today we're going to find out what happens next. We're in chapter 7 called Jesus Rules. Shh, you and me are buds, right? So keep this to yourself, please. I put an X on Zuri Claire's note, and I gave it to Emma, who gave it to Olivia, who gave it to Aggie, who gave it to Aisha, who gave it back to Zuri Claire. Where did I put the X? Well, I wrote another word on the note, maybe, and I checked that box. I am so smart. I hope that works, but I don't know. Zuri Claire just read the note right now and kind of looks confused. Okay, gotta go teach. Ahem. We left off with a cliffhanger yesterday, remember? I know you're desperate to see how the story ends, and I should hurry up. But since today's story starts with Isaac, and Isaac's name means laughter, I'd say it's a good time for a joke. What do you call a rabbit that lives under your bed? Give up? A dust bunny. Ha 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 ha. Are you guys awake? Come on, that was a good one. Okay, on with the story. This part really isn't funny. Just as the knife was coming down, Jesus called to Abraham from heaven, "Stop! Don't harm your son." Now I know you love and trust God. You won't hold anything back. Abraham believed God could actually raise his son back to life if Abraham went through with the killing, because God had promised Isaac would become a father. Well, Abraham passed the test. A ram was stuck by its horns in a thicket, and God told Abraham to sacrifice the ram instead. Jesus said, "Because you've obeyed God, you'll be blessed. God will multiply your descendants beyond number, like stars in the sky and sand on the seashore. Through your descendants, the nations of the earth will be blessed." Isaac grew up and got married to a woman named Rebekah. Isaac and Rebekah had two sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau liked to play outdoors, growing up hunting, trapping, yelling, and shouting. Esau was Isaac's favorite, but Rebekah loved Jacob most. Jacob loved to play indoors. He was a quieter kid, and that's okay. Quieter kids have fun too. One day, Esau was out hunting. He didn't catch anything, and he came home crazy starving. Jacob, hanging around the home tents like usual, had just cooked supper. "Stew," Esau said. "Must eat now." "Not so fast," Jacob said. "It'll cost you." "How much?" "Your birthright." Okay, now I gotta explain about birthright. Although they were twins, Esau had been born first, slightly before his brother. In those days, when a father died, everything he owned would be passed along to his kids. A birthright was a double share of their inheritance loot. The oldest son got twice as much as the younger ones, and the oldest son also became the head of the family. Birthright meant honor and possessions and spiritual leadership. Real value. "What good is a birthright if I die of hunger?" Esau yelled. "Quick, give me some stew!" Jacob sold him the stew, and that wasn't cool of Jacob. Jacob charged way too much for a measly bowl of stew. Esau did wrong too. Esau didn't value his birthright. He sold it way too cheap. Time passed, and Isaac, their dad, grew really old and blind and expected to die soon. So he called for his firstborn into his tent and said, "Esau, get your bows and arrows and hunt me some of that tasty wild game I love so much. Come home and roast it up, and then I'll eat it and bless you." Esau went off hunting, but Rebekah had overheard the conversation, and she wanted Jacob to get the blessing instead. So she hatched a scheme. "Hey, Jacob," she said, "go to the backyard and get your 2 young goats from our flock. I'll cook a quick dinner just the way your father likes it. You give your dad the food, and then he'll bless you before Esau gets back." "But Esau's a hairy dude," Jacob said. "What if Dad touches my arms? He'll know I'm lying." "Wear your brother's stinky hunting clothes," Rebekah said, "and cover your hands and neck with goat skin. Dad will never know the difference." Bad news. That's lying, stealing, impersonating a stinky hunter. Wrong. Jacob did everything like his mother told him to do. Normally that's good, but this time it was not. Jacob went into Isaac's tent and said, "Here you go, Dad. Eat up and bless me." "Wow, that was really quick hunting," Isaac said. "Come here so I can touch you." "Huh? You feel like Esau, but you sound like Jacob. What's the deal?" I don't know. I'm definitely Esau," Jacob said. Isaac ate the food Jacob had brought. Then he beckoned him closer. When Jacob kissed his dad, Isaac smelled Esau's clothes and said, "I guess it really is Esau." So Isaac blessed Jacob. He blessed him, and he blessed him, and he blessed him. Later, Esau came in from the hunting trip and learned he'd been tricked again. He was super mega angry. So angry, in fact, that he vowed to kill his brother. Rebekah told Jacob to run for his life. Not much else could not much else he could do now. Not following Grandpa Abraham's example of trusting and obeying God, both Esau and Jacob landed in big trouble. Kirby's notes stick inside your brain. Give me understanding so that I may keep your law and obey it with all my heart. Direct me in the path of your commands, for there I find delight. Psalm 119, 34 and 35. Want to read more? Read Genesis 22, verses 1 through 18, Hebrews 11, verse 17 through 19, and Genesis 25, verses 27 through 34. In Chapter 8, Jesus, Champion Wrestler. Zuri Claire is acting really cool, and I don't mean cool, I mean cold as ice. She won't even look at me. What did I do wrong? Hi, everybody. Well, Jacob ran far away to the home of Laban, his mom's brother. Laban had 2 daughters, Leah and Rachel, and soon Jacob fell in love with Rachel. Jacob said to Uncle Laban, I really want to marry your daughter Rachel. How about I work for you for free for 7 years if you'll give her to me as my wife? Laban's eyes gleamed, and he said, That sounds great to me. In 7 years, she's all yours. Good deal, said Jacob, and off to work he went. He worked and worked and worked. He was so in love with Rachel that the years just flew by. 7 years later, Jacob married Rachel, or so he thought. Back then, a woman wore lots of wedding veils and stuff, so it was hard to see her face. The morning after the wedding, Jacob woke up happy. Morning, Rachel, sweetie pie, lovey bird, ready for breakfast? He rolled over and looked at his wife. Bum, bum, bum. It wasn't Rachel at all. It was Leah. Jacob had married the wrong woman. Jacob didn't love Leah. He loved Rachel. Every moment of every day for 7 years, he dreamed of marrying Rachel. Jacob ran to Laban. You tricked me. What gives? Laban hemmed and hawed. Well, somebody had to marry Leah. In our customs, the older daughter always gets married first. Look, here's a bright idea. Marry them both. You can marry Rachel next week. Then work for me for another 7 years. Free. Everything will be fair and square. Jacob was up a creek. Fine, he said. He waited a week, married Rachel, and now had 2 wives. What a crazy mixed-up situation. The 2 wives fought, always jealous of each other. Pretty soon, Leah started having babies. In those days, more kids meant more honor. Leah had 4 boys, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. Boom, 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 boom. Rachel wasn't getting pregnant, which drove her totally crazy. So Rachel gave her maid to Jacob as a servant wife, because in the ancient culture, any children born to the maid were considered Rachel's. Rachel's maid had 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. Ha, Rachel said, I am totally winning this baby war. That just goes to show you how messed up the family had become. It had been a while since Leah had gotten pregnant, so she decided to give Jacob her maid too. Leah's maid also had 2 sons, Gad and Asher. Then Leah had 2 more sons, Issachar and Zebulun. She also had a daughter named Dinah. So at this point, Jacob had 10 sons and 1 daughter. Rachel still really wanted a baby of her own, and finally God gave her one, Joseph, a fine, healthy boy. Finally, Jacob decided he and his bunch would head home. Jacob made some shrewd business dealings with Laban and got lots of goats and stuff. Laban wasn't happy, no surprise, so Jacob and family fled without saying goodbye, but Laban chased them and caught up to them. He and Jacob talked it out and patched things up, and Jacob and his family went on their merry way. Then Jacob needed to face another angry man, his brother Esau, who was riding toward him with an army of 400 men. Jacob was shaking in his boots. He remembered how he'd wronged Esau. And that's where Jesus enters the story. The night before Jacob met Esau, Jesus came to Jacob and wrestled with him until sunrise. That's right, God's invisible world touched Jacob's visible world, and Jacob fought with God. It's another one of those Christianophies. Not many details of the fight are recorded, but just imagine a real brawl complete with drop kicks, backbreakers, and brainbusters. It wasn't because Jesus was weak that the fight lasted so long. Nope, Jesus could have pinned Jacob in a second, but Jesus just let Jacob fight and fight because that was Jacob's nature. He was a scrapper, always trying to get his way with God. Jesus let him get it out of his system. Jesus didn't finish the fight until the very end, when Jesus threw a blow that wrenched Jacob's hip right out of socket. Bam! Ouch! Fight over. Jacob finally learned he couldn't beat God. Duh. The New Testament says Jacob actually won. meaning he won a blessing from God and an appreciation for God's power. See, when the wrestling match stopped, Jacob asked for a blessing, so Jesus changed Jacob's name. Jacob means deceiver, and Jacob had certainly lived up to that lousy name. But Jesus changed Jacob's name to Israel, meaning God's fight or God rules. The course of Jacob's life was changed. Instead of fighting against God, Jacob would now trust God to fight for him. Jacob knew he couldn't rely on his natural strength anymore. He had to rely on God. Israel would also become the name of the nation that God would build to bring in the Savior. More than ever, Jacob needed to rely on God. Because remember, Jacob had more than one tough guy to face, Esau with his 400 soldiers. We'll find out soon about that. Remember, you can fight against God or trust God to fight for you. Which would you rather do? Kirby's notes stick inside your brain. Jacob met God face to face, and God spoke to him. The Lord, God of heaven's armies, the Lord is his name. Hosea 12:4-5. Want to read more? Read Genesis 29 through 32 and Hosea chapter 12, verses 3-6. And here's the posters from the wrestling match. There's one of them. And the other. And we'll see what happens tomorrow. See you later, guys.